Good morning. Good morning, everyone. How are my friends out there today? Do you like Dr. Seuss? I love Dr. Seuss books. So we're going to read a Dr. Seuss book. Today, Horton hatches the egg. Okay? Let's begin. Sighed Maisie, a lazy bird hatching an egg. I'm tired and I'm bored and I've kinks in my leg from just sitting here day after day. It's work. How I hate it. I'd much rather play. I'd take a vacation, fly off for a rest, if I could find someone to stay on my nest. If I could find someone, I'd fly away free. Then Horton, the elephant, passed by her tree. Hello, called the lazy bird, smiling her best. You've nothing to do, and I do need a rest. Would you like to sit on the egg in my nest? The elephant laughed. Why, of all silly things, I haven't feathers and I haven't wings. Me on your egg? Why, that doesn't make sense. Your egg is so small, ma'am, and I'm so immense. Tut, tut, answered Maisie. I know you're not small, but I'm sure you can do it. No trouble at all. Just sit on it softly. You're gentle and kind. Come, be a good fellow. I know you won't mind. I can't, said the elephant. Please, begged the bird. I won't be gone long, sir. I give you my word. I'll hurry right back. Why, I'll never be missed. Very well, said the elephant. Since you insist. You want a vacation. Go fly off and take it. I'll sit on your egg and I'll try not to break it. I'll stay and be faithful. I mean what I say. Toodaloo, sung out Maisie and fluttered away. There goes Maisie. The first thing to do, murmured Horton. Let's see. The first thing to do is prop up this tree and make it much stronger. That has to be done. Before I get on it, I must weigh a ton. That's a pretty skinny tree for that big old elephant. Then carefully, tenderly, gently he crept up the trunk to the nest where the little egg was kept. Uh-oh, that looks pretty scary to me. Let's see what happens. Then Horton the elephant smiled. Now that's that. And he sat, and he sat, and he sat. And he sat all that day, and he kept the egg warm. And he sat all that night, though there was a terrible storm. It poured and it lightened, it thundered, it rumbled. This isn't much fun, the poor elephant grumbled. I wish she'd come back, 'cause I'm cold and I'm wet. I hope that Maisie bird doesn't forget. Looks like a terrible storm. But Maisie, by this time, was far beyond reach, enjoying the sunshine way off in Palm Beach, and having such fun, such a wonderful rest, decided she'd never go back to her nest. Was that nice? So Horton kept sitting there day after day, and soon it was autumn, and the leaves blew away. And then came winter, The snow and the sleet and the icicles hung from his trunk and his feet. But Horton kept sitting and said with a sneeze, "I'll stay on this egg and I won't let it freeze. I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. An elephant's faithful 100%. Poor Horton." So poor Horton sat there the whole winter through. And then came the springtime with troubles anew. His friends gathered round and they shouted with glee, "Look, Horton the elephant's up in a tree." They taunted him, they teased him, they yelled, "How absurd! Old Horton the elephant thinks he's a bird." Look at all his friends gathered around. They laughed and they laughed. Then they all ran away. And Horton was lonely. He wanted to play. But he sat on the egg and continued to say, "I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. An elephant's faithful 100%. See, Horton? Feel bad for Horton. No matter what happens, this egg must be tended. But poor Horton's troubles were far, far from ended. For while Horton sat there so faithful, so kind, the hunters came sneaking up softly behind. See the hunters coming? Uh-oh. I don't want to skip a page. He heard the men's footsteps. He turned with a start. Their rifles were aiming right straight at his heart. Did he run? He did not. Horton stayed on that nest. He held his head high and he threw out his chest and he looked at the hunters as much as to say, "Shoot if you must, but I won't go away. I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. An elephant's faithful 100%. Good old Horton. But the men didn't shoot, much to Horton's surprise. They dropped their 3 guns, and they stared with wide eyes. "Look," they all shouted, "can such a thing be? An elephant sitting on top of a tree? It's strange. It's amazing. It's wonderful. No, don't shoot him. We'll catch him. That's just what we'll do. Let's take him alive. Why, he's terribly funny. We'll sell him back home to a circus for money." And the first thing he knew, they had built a big wagon with ropes on the front for the pulleys to drag on. They dug up his tree and put it inside, and Horton so sad that he practically cried. "We're off," the men shouted, and off they all went, with Horton unhappy 100%. Poor Horton. Up out of the jungle, up into the sky, up over the mountains 1,000 feet high. Then down, down the mountains and down to the sea went the cart with the elephant, egg, nest, and tree. Then out of the wagon and onto a ship, out over the ocean, and ooh, what a trip! Rolling and tossing and splashed with the spray. And Horton said, day after day after day, "I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. But oh, am I seasick? 100%. Poor Horton." After bobbing around for 2 weeks like a cork, they landed at last in the town of New York. "All ashore!" the men shouted, and down with a lurch went Horton the elephant, still on his perch, tied onto a board that could just scarcely hold him. Bump! Horton landed. And then the men sold him. That's terrible. Sold to a circus. Then week after week, they showed him to people at 10 cents a peek. They took him to Boston, to Kalamazoo, Chicago, Weehawken, and Washington too, to Dayton, Ohio, St. Paul, Minnesota, to Wichita, Kansas, to Drake, North Dakota. And everywhere thousands of folks flocked to see and laugh at the elephant up in a tree. Poor Horton grew sadder the farther he went. But he said as he sat in the hot, noisy tent, "I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. An elephant's faithful, 100%. Then one day, the circus show happened to reach a town way down south, not so far from Palm Beach. And dawdling along way up high in the sky, who of all people should chance to fly by but that old good-for-nothing bird, Runaway Maisie, still on vacation and still just as lazy. And spying the flags and the tents just below, she sang up, "What fun! I'll go to the show." And she swooped from the clouds through an open tent door. "Good gracious," gasped Maisie, "I've seen you before." Poor Horton looked up with his face white as chalk. He started to speak, but before he could talk, there rang out the noisiest ear-splitting squeaks from the egg that he'd sat on for 51 weeks. A thumping, a bumping, a wild, alive screeching. "My egg!" shouted Horton. "My egg! Why, it's hatching!" "But it's mine!" screamed the bird when she heard the egg crack. The work was all done, now she wanted it back. "It's my egg," she sputtered. "You stole it from me. Get off of my nest and get out of my tree." Poor Horton backed down with a sad, heavy heart. But at that very instant, the egg burst apart, and out of the pieces of red and white shell, from the egg that he'd sat on so long and so well, Horton the elephant saw something whiz. It had ears and a tail and a trunk just like his. Can you see the baby elephant? Bird? And the people came shouting, "What's all this about?" They looked and they stared with their eyes popping out. Then they cheered and they cheered and they cheered more and more. They'd never seen anything like it before. "My goodness, my gracious," they shouted. "My word, it's something brand new. It's an elephant bird." And it shouldn't be. It should be like that, because Horton was faithful. He sat and he sat. He meant what he said, and he said what he meant. Get Maisie. And they sent him home happy, 100%. Yay, that's the story of Horton hatches the egg.
Horton is the kind of friend that anyone would be lucky to have. What are some things that you remember about Horton? Well, he was an elephant, yeah. Yes, he was huge. He probably weighed a ton. And he had to take care of an egg. It's a funny story to begin with, an elephant taking care of a little bird's egg. And we are not going to talk about the bird because we can say some not nice things about that bird, right? But Horton was such a good friend that Horton stayed with that egg throughout all the story. Even when the mother bird had forgotten about her egg, Horton stayed with the egg because Horton knew that his word was on the line. What do you think the story would have been like if Horton had decided to leave the egg? Maybe somebody would have eaten the egg. Do you think Horton would have liked that? No. Do you think the mama bird would have liked that? Probably not. Horton said, if I said I'm going to stay with that egg, I'm going to stay with the egg no matter what. Jesus tells us that we should let our yes be yes and let our no be no. What he's trying to tell us is that when we say something, we have to mean it and we have to stand by it no matter what. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't change your mind. You can change your mind all the time. You can even say, I thought about this and I actually have another opinion about it. But if you say you're going to do something, you need to do your level best to do it. Because that way people can count on you. Just like we imagine that God is going to love us. What happens if one day God decides not to love us? What happens if one day God says, loving you is like sitting on an egg. I don't get any reward out of it. I'd rather go sit on a beach somewhere. That's not our God. Our God is what we call faithful. He is true to his word. He stands by it. His yes means yes, and his no means no. It means that if God says he's going to love you, he's going to love you no matter what. God stands by his word, just like Horton. And just like when Horton says, an elephant stands by his word 100%, God stands by God's love for you 100%. Just like Horton and that egg, God will never leave you abandoned. He will sit by your side no matter what. And we're taught that we can be faithful friends just like Horton and just like God. We can be faithful to our friends no matter what, even when they're wrong. You know, if you do something wrong, your friends might abandon you. They might leave you. But what about the friend that says, hey, I know you messed up, but you probably feel pretty bad about it, and you could probably use a friend right now. Sometimes those are the best friends of all. So be faithful to your friends, be loyal, and know that God will never leave you. Thank you.
Peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river.